Sure.
We never thought about that when we were looking for office space, which district we should be looking.
It's good to be in the West Fargo.
I don't know what the hours are.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, you're a long way from West Fargo.
Oh,
You're
okay.
in the school district.
You're in our school district.
Oh, we are.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're in the city.
Mitch Carlson, Lamar. We start school next week, get service on Mondays, open the door for the kids on Thursday, so we start early.
Could, when you say, could you just say whether you have more enrollment or less enrollment
Oh, yeah.
going forward? That would be a good thing. Just
I think we're gonna be maybe +10 probably.
Yeah.
We have about 15 to 20 new students coming in, the way it looks. We
Yeah.
just
That's
don't, you
good.
don't know until the first day though. Some say they're coming, some.
And how do those students, just from a community standpoint, how are those students coming in? Was there a new business? Was there a change in boundaries? Was there a?
I'll be honest with you, I think one family moved from Minnesota because their family lives there and told them about the school. They wanted to come to school here.
Yeah.
Got a couple, I'll call it non-tuition agreements on my desk now that they want to come. So that just creates a little problem with busing though. We have to figure out if we're gonna do it or not, the busing part, that sort of puts probably an extra 15 miles on our bus, going 7 miles and 7 miles back, but people don't think 7 miles is a lot, but when you talk about times, that means you're pushing everybody back a few minutes to pick up, so that means you're starting earlier, so there are some of the things that it's challenging. We'll probably do it because we need kids.
Hard to turn away.
Yeah, so it's hard to say. So just little things like that, Remember one family moved to Lemoore back in April. Didn't know it. They just came and they just didn't go to school.
Oh,
They moved from Minnesota. And to be honest with you, sometimes it deals with housing, available housing for people. Makes a difference. There's housing available, some will come.
Very good. So Jim, is Fargo up or down in 100, 200 kids? It's hard to
Well,
tell.
we won't really know for another probably 2.5. Actually, we won't really know for about a month.
Okay, yeah, that's harder.
We're ahead where we were last year at this point in time. But again, we're guessing right now that we'll get up about 120 students.
Okay. Thank you. We'll go to Chris. We'll do
Sure.
your next.
Chris Larson, we're up. It's a guess a little for us too. Probably about 5, with 3 tuition agreements that, just like Mitch was talking about, that by the time next week, we don't start quite as early, so I have a little bit more time to figure it out.
And can I ask one last question? Just that it's good information. So did you get your all your teacher filled? I mean, with the governor coming out and okaying the education standard and practice board stuff.
That didn't really change anything. I hired 2 from the Philippines, so maybe they're not here yet, but.
When are they supposed to
Says, I
arrive?
don't know, says processing, so time will tell.
Well, it made it easier for them to start right away before they get their social security card. So that'll help.
Okay.
Go ahead, Jen.
Jolene Garden, Seek,
I'm Riley Satterwhite, also Seek. Andrew Deagle, Seek.
Brenna Yankee,
Derek Simonson, I'm Superintendent Griggs County Central in Cooperstown, North Dakota. I'll be going into my 4th year as superintendent there. We are up, we'll probably be up about 10 students. We've been up 12% over the last 3 years. So Cooperstown is a growing community. We've been seeing our enrollment go up, so it's a good sign. We're fully staffed. But I was just talking about how it's close. We had 1 applicant for ag, 1 for social studies, 3 openings in elementary, and 4 applicants. So we scrape by in Cooper. We have a lot of smaller districts surrounding us. So we tend to have teachers live in Cooperstown, work in other districts, and it seems like some of them are coming. The harsh winter helped us probably get a couple applicants. To be honest, people don't want to commute. So yeah.
So I just remember, if I'm correct, that Griggs County was an empowerment zone, was it not, by the federal government? So there was some extra dollars for economic development, and this might have been a few years ago. So are we seeing some growth in the manufacturing plant there in Cooperstown, or where are those people coming from?
Yeah, we're seeing some growth with some manufacturing, like Cheyenne Tooling. You probably see them on some commercials and stuff. We've seen some other businesses come into the community. They just built a $30 million hospital. in Cooperstown.
Yeah,
So there's definitely growth. There's nowhere to live. That's probably bottlenecking it a bit. But yeah, there's certainly plenty of growth going on. And then as I talked to you about, I battled the
Right.
tax evaluation situation back and forth
right.
with all that in the picture.
Did that get settled?
It didn't. I was at the state board of equalization meeting yesterday, kind of making some of my concerns known.
Yeah.
With that.
I'm Judge Blishing.
Brittany Gandhi, Richland 44. We are up by 10 students. We've had incremental growth the last 3 or 4 years. Great. And we're just under 300, so 10 is good, great. Our big change and challenge this year is our busing. We for the first time couldn't staff our bus routes. Drivers, so we are doing a full drop-off pickup spots, which is completely first time in 50 some years. So it's a big impact on families. So far, we haven't seen about 40 or 50, 45 kids open enroll into our district, about 30 out. We've had one withdrawal back to their home district since this plan went out. I don't know formally if it's related, but there were threats that there would be more if this happened. We haven't seen that happen yet. So that's been tough. That's taken up a lot of the summer trying to figure that out. So, but gearing up for a good school year, we start 2 weeks from yesterday.
Are they still building new houses in that development
Yes.
out there?
Yes.
Corey Steiner, Superintendent, Northern Cass, 10th year there. Right now plus 30. Going into this year, probably be a little higher, and I think I have 15 non-tuition agreements on my desk that I think our board actually probably will deny simply because space is non-existent, and then the busing part is real. We're 5 short, and obviously if you know our location, you're not walking across the street. There's 2 kids that walk across the street in our school district. So we're actually having the conversation of going to only pickup spots in our communities too. That's a hot button issue because we run 2 buses out of Harwood and open enroll. So that'll be we just don't have any solutions for drivers right now. There's not people that want to do it. So I don't know what we're doing. We have tons of families we're paying to drive their kids this year too, but it's fully staffed. That part wasn't an issue, and staffed with all of our non-certified as well, but busing is a problem.
Brittany, your staffing was all right?
We had one science teacher we couldn't fill, and so I convinced a part-time person to come full-time.
Yeah.
So technically, yes, but I couldn't hire a science. Everything else is filled, but bus.
Yours went pretty smoothly then.
Yeah.
It's
It's not a lot of applicants, but we got good people.
I would say our proximity to Fargo helps us in staffing. Most of the time, I think it's hurting us in busing because our people who have CDLs are choosing to go drive for companies and make more. So we think.
Yeah.
I'm Carrie Whipple. I work here.
I'm Kyle Davison, the executive director. It's my 19th year, and we appreciate everybody being here today. It's an important day. We've put a lot of work into, although you might not see a lot of documents, there's been a lot of conversations and a lot of thought put into the day by our staff. And the most important thing is to get your feedback today and grow with this process together. We see it as a way to advance the relationship with the board. And as you'll see from some of our data points and some of the things that we're working on, we've seen growth in revenue. We've seen challenges with staffing. We've had to make decisions, based on whether it's might not be busing, but it may be other things, right? And that are hard decisions. And so we hope to get deeper into those conversations, and we encourage questions and dialogue today and to this process. And we appreciate everybody being here.
And I just want to not skip you guys for introductions real quick.
Justin Fryer, Lisbon will be my 3rd year. I think we're probably gonna be up to 5 kids, probably sell around 620. We're okay with staff. Bus drivers are good. Teachers were good. I had to convince an old friend to do music out of retirement. Last year I had to convince an old friend to do counseling, so I don't know how many old friends I have. That was two people out of retirement and everything out of options, so. But overall, I think we'll be fine for this year, but the challenges are real. I thought last year we had quite a few more applicants than we did this year. We kind of scraped by this year. I mean, not that we didn't have high quality applicants, but we're getting like 1 or 2, maybe 3 for a position, so like 6, 7, so. We're ready to go. We start the 28th.
Heidi?
Larson, President of Jamestown Public School Board, run with SEC and school board for a number of years. Our enrollment is down some, which is what we projected, so not a surprise to us. Big article, I haven't read it yet. A big article in our Jamestown Sun today, our busing contract came back 55% increase. And so not anywhere near where our budget was, and it's been challenging, and so so there's a private grade school in our town that we provide some busing for, so we're going to probably are going to be able to continue that, and so which creates consternation in our community with some of that. So there's a lot of dynamics at play. We're going to have to change some of our routes, not offer busing where we had before. So, and even with that, it's still huge cost. So activity busing is also a problem for us because we play in the west. So our closest game is 100 miles one direction. Our furthest game is 330 miles. So we are closer to Minneapolis than we are to our furthest game on the west. So, and that's athletics and activities, whether you're music or athletics or whatever. So especially the longer trips we struggle with, because it's an overnight for a bus driver. It's away from their family. It's usually a weekend, so the kids aren't missing so much school. So the busing is a big deal for us. Teacher shortage is definitely affecting us. Staffing. We're trying to navigate the new direction from yesterday or whatever, with how those contracts can look. How just kind of trying. I think. I don't know if the language has changed, that they still can't hold a contract, but yet what kind of contract can you give them? Do they have negotiated agreement, right? I mean, so where is all this, so we're trying to navigate that and fill our classrooms with the appropriate staff, whether it be a student teacher or whatever kind of support they can get. So lots of fun challenges.
And yet they all sound so familiar.
Yes.
My name is Patty Stem, and I currently serve on the West Fargo School Board, and we are not taking all your bus drivers because we are short 12. We need 12. We actually put a ticker on we changed our walk zones because I'm 12. I don't know what we're gonna do. And we're short some teachers too, but we've had some luck this last week finding some music teachers, but I think we're still short 8 or 9 last count. And as far as student enrollment, no idea. We're projecting 380 or so, but we'll see if they all come. We won't know for another month. Increase. Yeah.
That's the size of 2 of our grade schools.
That's kind of coming. All right. Different challenges, right? Let's go ahead then and call our meeting to order. Do we have any additions to our agenda? Any addition?
I don't think so.
No. All right. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So.
Corey, thank you. Is there any discussion about the agenda? All those in favor of approving the agenda, right? Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Moving into the consent agenda.
Move adoption of the consent agenda is provided in the packet.
Thank you, Jim. Second.
I'll second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion of the consent agenda? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, moving into our annual report.
We're gonna have a little bit of, we have some slide placeholders. The idea is not to sit and read slides to you all day long at all. We have some slide. So we want to touch a little bit on 2022 and 23. And just go through just a little bit again, some demographic stuff and just again, I think so we're all working off the same foundation. Again, we put up our mission and our vision. I think there will be a little bit of a theme here. I like our mission and vision. I really like our vision. And again, it's being a solution-based organization as we the more that I'm in the shared service model business, I'll call it. And I serve on 2 commissions for higher education, one out of the Western United States with those states, one out of the Midwest. And I see that work being done at the higher education level. And then I see the work being done with other education service agencies across the United States, which are, I think, was there a latest number when you were out there? 46 or 47 states. It's really a good, with the challenges with workforce and the challenges in education, it's really a good place to come to try to identify collaboratively solutions and then an infrastructure to deliver those solutions. And sometimes that shared service model, somebody else can own it or the organization can own it, but it's ultimately being that researcher, facilitator, and driving that collaboration. So this is something that we used at Cognia, and again, we provide an infrastructure for collaboration where schools can come together to create solutions. And we really look, does it lead to efficiencies? Does it lead to cost savings for those who participate? Again, I'm not going to read each part of the slide, but again, as you look at our desired results and we talk about those desired results, I think it's important not only from my standpoint, as we talk about my personal goals and professional goals later on, is to really have a deeper understanding about what my role and responsibility is in the organization, and those things that have to happen with our staff in order to create the outcomes and the results that we need as an organization. And this just really highlights those things that has to happen and those considerations in order to make, whether it's a program or a service or some work to create those solutions. Again, I think the most important one, and we've talked about that since the very beginning when Jen was hired and others have been hired, is really building that trust is really, really valuable and really the core foundation of where I have been since the beginning over 19 years and what we hope that is represented throughout all the employees in our organization. So then again, I think it's important to review the law. We are in Century Code. Again, we have a lot of veteran people on this board, but I always think it's important to review that. This law has changed over time. One of the things that Riley and I are working on, and again, I'll talk a little bit more later on about it, is the history of the SEC and REAs. So I'm working on that project with Riley. We just received back from Legislative Council the history of the legislation for REAs all the way back from 2003. So we're going to put a history together by the end of the year. It's kind of a foundational piece. It's kind of like archiving your organization as you look back over the years. I think Section 2 is the most important piece here. And it really says it doesn't include a regional education association from offering additional services to its member districts. Sometimes it's kind of hard to figure out where we are within that as our scope of work is broadened. But again, I think within our strategic plan and our governance model, part of our goal through the planning committee would be to start to have a better way to analyze and look and be more looking for feedback. And I don't want to say be more transparent. We're always transparent. Anybody asks us something, we're transparent. We'll tell you what's going on. But just having that feedback and understanding and including more people in feedback for the direction that things happen. And I'll use just one example. So like an example might be childcare aware. We kind of just went into that grant full speed, and we didn't ask for a lot of feedback or a lot of things. We just went kind of full speed. So I would see that having something that size would have a little more process in it as opposed to just the executive director kind of saying, yeah, let's do that, right? So that would be an example of a goal of how to move forward with this process. So then again, our board and stuff, one of the considerations, is that the right you represent the right schools. You know, that's a consideration we can have as we move forward. We really haven't looked at that, to be honest with you. We are going to try to define the lead administrate over the next year here. We're going to try to define, we didn't try to come up with answers all today. Today is the start of a journey. Last year was the journey of creating the plan. This year is the journey of creating a foundation for of building on that plan. And we hope to take great strides by the end of the year, but really have then that even a better springboard of having 1 year through that process. But again, I think this is something to consider. Are these the right schools? Is this the right numbers? Again, any questions, you're welcome to bring them up, but it's something that if you think you don't have the right schools in there, we need a different mix, it's certainly an option to discuss.
And when we do our, we have a section to go back and look at the bylaws in terms of how the members of the board within those regions are selected.
And does the state come up with which districts are in which REA?
That's a really good question. The answer is no. This was started very organically, where everybody just kind of figured out where they wanted to be. It's kind of like human service zones. We did the same thing. And so it's just kind of evolved to this, right? And so nobody was told where they had to go or what they had to do. It just happened.
But there are rules around, you have to be contiguous.
Yes.
And you have to have, yeah, in a certain population, like you can't fall between or below like 3,000 students, and there's a certain geographical area too, I believe, and so that's all in.
So you couldn't have just one district way out west saying we want to be part of SEEK. If they were sitting in between two REAs, they could decide which one.
So like Corey could say, I want to go join.
Correct. And there's a process then for doing that in a time frame.
Okay.
I haven't had a lot of movement over the last
New Rockford's
few years.
moved around a little
Yeah.
bit. New Rockford's moved around a little
Yeah.
bit.
What's that?
Carrington is relatively new.
Yeah,
It's been a while though.
No, Carrington's always been here. Pingree is like.
Yeah.
Oh, in the middle, but they.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Kind of.
Yeah.
You know,
Time goes by fast. though,
I
right?
know, it does go by way too fast.
Yeah.
New Rockford kind of.
So I think,
I was like.
so again, just the keys to the success, and again, I know I beat this to death and I always apologize for it, but I probably shouldn't, is, you know, we are here to take risk, right? I mean, we take calculated risk. We have conversations constantly internally. And I think, again, part of that is part of that process, again, is helping people understand the discussions a little bit more from a board standpoint through the planning committee, and through some of that is, you know, how we weigh the risk and how we go internally through the process of determining what to do or not to do a little bit, I guess is a better simple way to put it. But again, it's great employees, it's having good members, it's having great partners, a strong board. We've always had a very good board, always people attend. And then, of course, at the end of the day, from the very beginning, we set up a business model to sustain our work. So we'll talk more about that too, again, through the year and trying to get a deeper understanding of some of that process. So to the highlights. All right. Thank you for your going through that with me. So last year, as I reflected on last year's kind of retreat, I didn't think it was one of the best efforts I put in over the 19 years. But again, we were coming off a cognitive visit and really we knew we had to renew the strategic plan. We spent a lot of time doing that strategic planning. And we appreciate everybody's work in it. Member engagement is always advancing relationships in organization. And then we made a shift internally in regards to our staffing structure and how we just an internal structure to better align with what I believe was the things that need to happen as we were moving forward. So we're not going to get into real deep highlights. We know that we have the strategic plan in front of us, right? So here's just, again, I'm not gonna read these, but a lot of our work was driven by the Cognia visit. We know we needed to keep improving our processes, our measurables, and work through that process. We're required to, by law, to have that accreditation process. We don't necessarily agree internally that it aligns very well with what we do, but we value the process because it forces us to reflect on our work and what we're doing in it. And so again, these are just some things that they talked about, and it's more about our processes that strategic plan and operation plan will drive to address some of these things as we move into our next one. So again, just briefly, new organizational chart, new strategic plan. We're continuing our financial stability. We'll talk about that, I think, in the next slide or two, right? So those are really our accomplishments. There are a lot of accomplishments that happen in our organization. And I think that's kind of hard. That's kind of tough because we could sit around and talk about all the things that we did and with a TSI, CSI implementing that, and some of the work that we've done in business services, the growth in the literacy programs, but again, trying to just, talk broadly about what we said we were going to really focus on. And, but I always feel bad because there's so much ongoing work that happens and so many people that are working hard that I feel like we're leaving people out. But so then the next slide. So this is our financials. So we've got a decision point we have here in the next couple of slides. So here, this is our financials. So we had a final ending fund balance of $380,964. Our revenue exceeded our budgeted revenues by about 199,000. And then
Mainly due to Medicaid.
mainly through the Medicaid and the Health Trust. And so let's just look at our Medicaid just a little bit. So I'm not sure, I was out yesterday, but
I don't think we added any more units, but people are just
yeah.
starting to use it more efficiently and more claims are being paid.
So so sometimes I focus on Medicaid or things that I understand, there are other people that know deeper about some of the things that they do, but to make my point, it's easier if I pick something that I understand better. But this is an example of, on the left, you can see the number of students that are on IEPs, and that number actually went down. I think the green line, it's a little ways away from me, is the amount of claims that went up.
Paid claims.
Paid claims. And one of the things that I think, and then it shows our growth from 2015 when we literally were at $0 the first part of the year to up over $6 million in regards to paid claims. And I think it goes back to creating a solution. So we always look at creating a solution. And so this was an idea that I brought back, right? So I'll take a little bit of credit for bringing the idea back. But it was really an idea that people bought on with the John Porter, the business manager in West Fargo helped me out, not Levi beforehand, Mark Lemire. And then there was 3 schools. Who was the other one? Wahpeton was they weren't doing anything. And they just bought into it. They just said, we agree. And we just went for it, right? And we made an investment. We took risk. We put probably between $50,000 and $60,000 into this project. And that's not even including our time. That was just money that we put in to get it going. And so again, this risk happened to pay off. And it continues to be a really big goal in that expansion of the state Medicaid plan and the work that's being done in order to address resources for behavioral health. And ultimately, we have to have a better behavioral health system so schools are able to understand where they look for help when things get escalated. And it's actually even bigger than just Medicaid billing in schools. systemic thing that we have going on in every state, but. So this is an example of how we grow programs, how we solve problems. This number came in higher, that's why our 199,000 is higher. This number came in, I don't remember the exact number, was it 100,000 more than we wanted, 75,000 more? And then the other thing is with our ND Fit, where we created a solution for the health insurance trust for competitiveness, that came in because we have more users. And we got some more revenue from ND Fit in regard to some policy changes and more work that we had to do. So they upped our dollars too. So. Any questions on that?
On the health insurance trust, we bill each school, correct? The CC?
I'll have to send it over to the boss.
ND Fit.
Yeah,
Bills.
ND Fit, yes.
ND bills every school for their premiums. Yep.
Okay. And it's per user, correct?
Yes, like
Okay.
you would have your premium payment and then, yes, they get an invoice for each of the premiums that they,
See, remember, we're going to start our third year with ND Fit, correct?
Yeah.
Is it the third year?
Yeah.
Remember we put earnest money in the start.
yes, you did.
How does that work then for the earnest money?
That works in the way distant future.
It's not.
So solid that
Well, because there was about 30 some schools that put the earnest money in,
Yeah.
correct?
every school, still to this
Everybody
day,
does.
if you
Oh,
join.
even if you join today. you have to
Yes,
put earnest
yes,
money.
Everybody.
yes,
Okay.
everybody, every city, anyone that. joins.
Okay,
And so eventually, if we become a very solid entity, like Ender, like there could be kickbacks and such, but
Over
that's,
time, you could.
that's not something you should be counting on.
okay, that's fine. It's not earnest money back to the school that put it in.
Technically, it would.
There's been policies made now about how they could potentially do that,
Yeah.
but it's not really on the radar until.
So it'd be like a
they're very
dividend?
established, yes.
Okay.
But we were told, am I correct, that if we were vested in 2 years and say we wanted to go to our own plan again, then we would get that money back out?
Yeah,
I mean, we're not
I
going
don't know,
anywhere,
who told that, but I hope you're not going anywhere.
We're not,
I don't
but they told us that when we sat down, that like, basically it was 2 years, that was one thing we could sell our board on. We're not going,
Oh,
anywhere, so
okay.
it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I would
We'd
not,
be
I
nuts
would
to
not
do it.
repeat. I mean, everybody signs an agreement that says that if you were to leave in September, there's a run out of claims. That we're not just gonna give you that dollar back because you're not paying premiums anymore and your claims are still gonna come in on our dollar. So,
If the
I-
organization could afford that.
right, at this point, I don't think you'd just be written your check back.
And so how much premiums do we run through a month in our organization, Hunter?
Yeah, we're a little.
4 million a month.
So it's about 50 million a year of premiums that we run through. Okay. So again, Hunter does a great job along with Brenna on that. They work very close together on it. Brenna gets involved probably a little bit more on the rules and policies and side of things, but it's a big lift. They do a great job on that.
We learn every day.
Yeah. I think it's important, and this is, again, it's can change in a heartbeat, right? Or not a heartbeat, but it can change, but the demographic, so we have two separate pools in there, and I think it's really important to understand this a little bit, is we have the cities and counties, and we have the school districts, and it's called the January group and the October group. There's one. or two-
Mainly, there's
There's
few
a
that are-
couple of changes.
few schools that are in with the
The
district.
school demographic is so much better than cities and counties because you don't have, and I'm gonna embellish here a little bit to make my point because I don't have data on it, but you don't have those people that are running the plows until they're 70 years old out on the highways near Edgeley and Lemoore and stuff, right? And those are the higher cost people. School district people usually retire earlier and they're a younger demographic. And it's just it's a better. Yeah, it's a better pool. Yeah. So,
That's
all right.
I'm on our public health board. We serve a few counties and we're waiting for information back actually.
Yeah, and again, I think Jamestown and West Fargo have used the same consultants as ND Fit, and I think are continuing to. It's a very dynamic, very rapidly changing area, so.
just an FYI, Bell Bank was making the rounds yesterday, soliciting health insurance. They get quotes, basically.
Oh, really?
They stopped at my school yesterday. No.
I didn't
Well,
know they did health insurance.
Yeah, they want us to, basically, they want us to they want to get a quote.
Yeah.
They want us, they want to quote us a number, basically, so.
Which belt were they ones out of Fargo?
No, well, the one that was stationed at Jamestown, but she works at home from Fargo. Yeah,
It's part of the old Warner and Co.
yeah. So just an FYI, that might be people knocking the door and looking at get new quotes.
All right. So this is, so again, as I'll repeat myself, so we had, I didn't share this, so we actually budgeted, what was the number, 151?
Yeah,
Our
our
budget-
budget, we predicted to be above.
We predicted our budget to be above 151. We
Mhm.
did, that was,
But we did it
it was unusual, but
higher.
that was projected, and so that's where the 199 comes in. We add that to the 151 and you get to the 380 approximately. So with that, we have an innovation fund. This is the innovation fund. This is the rules and the policy that we have. And so then each year at the retreat, the board needs to determine how they want to replenish annually that fund.
So to be clear, our actual reserve is around 3.8.
Okay, yeah, you guys keep making me clear on.
So-
Make sure I say it right.
Yeah.
Our reserve is.
Our carryover from the year was 380,000.
Yes.
in the
our
bank
reserve
is
$3.8 million.
So we're clearly way above the 1.75
Yes.
to fund the
Right.
innovation fund, so.
Okay.
In the past, we've had 100,000, you voted to put it at 100,000 last year.
And we started with did we start with 100,000 the first year?
I don't know.
I think we
Not
started,
quite.
I think we started it with 75 the first year. It didn't all get spent, so we had money there. You guys voted last year to
Make it
add funds so that it was $100,000 balance, and what you see here is just how it was spent, and we did expend all of the dollars. We've got Justin and Mitch and Derek and myself on the committee. And we did grant out. We have one meeting that will happen as soon as this meeting is over. Before we send it out, we have to send it out to the members before I think the 1st of September. But we had just 2 rounds of applications and we were out of money.
Were there any school districts that applied that did not get awarded? Did they all get awarded the full amount they requested?
No. So the second round of applicants, there were more that were approved for more money. And so we had to make a decision at that time. We didn't have a policy for that, eventuality. And so we decided that we would fund them all to expend all of the money. And I think it came out to about 76.5% of what was asked for each of those 4 projects.
So do we anticipate that there could be? more
There were no
requested?
other applicants or anybody who really asked me about it after those funds were expended. Again,
What kind of feedback or follow-up do we get for
we get a
the
report.
investment?
If we get a report, so the process, again, we have a process and I think you guys all have that, but we can get it to you. The process is for them to get the funding, then there has to be a report that says we did the
Thought we had
things.
that, yeah.
And the budget came in as projected, and so we kept it really simple, but
Yeah.
again, it's just a form that says we did the things and sometimes they send
It
it
seems to be working pretty well. I mean, people are schools are happy with it.
I'll open it up to these 3 and then I'll follow up, like some of our concerns or.
Well, I think we talked about last fall about changing the process a little, just little tweaks here and there type deal. Nothing too extravagant, but little tweaks, I think, because like I'll use my example, our teacher submitted this application rather than going through administration. Little things like that. We should make sure it goes through admin in case you have too many applications from one school, you might have 3 applications from one school.
Or if you
Yeah.
don't agree with the project?
Yeah, or if you agree with the project, yeah. That's exactly right. So little tweaks like that, because we didn't have an admin signature on the application, it was just an application. And, you know, our second year doing it, we're learning a little bit more as we go through it, and. You know, I guess the biggest thing is the follow-up, I guess, is, you know, how it's going, and. That's probably one thing we probably need to be more. I would say you're probably on top of it, but you know, from my standpoint, I'm not sure how it went with Edgeley or. Northern Cass and stuff like that, so I'm not sure on that, if it's fully implemented and how well it went, and,
And like I said, we'll come back together and we'll review all of that, but
yeah,
Allison left in the middle of the year, and so she also helped to keep on top of a lot of those
Yeah.
things. So
so.
there's a little scrambling in the spring, just, we have the process, so that was good, but again. Derek, do you have any other feedback or Justin on some of the?
Just, we use scoring rubrics, obviously, so that's how we select them. The rubrics are pretty extensive, so we each rate each individual applicant and we come up with a raw score, then we compare it with. Between the three of us, and then we decide who we're gonna go with, but that was kind of a little more challenging with the scoring rubrics. I mean, it's pretty intensive to go through it if you're doing honest evaluation, so. We had some good conversations about who we're gonna fund in the first round, then went back around the second round, we talked a little bit more, and that's why we decided. To split it up because everybody was so close with the score.
Yeah. I think one thing also we talked about is, should this be new projects? Like, when I look at all, when those list of 6 there, the Smart Lab's not a new project, but it's new to Sargent Central. And how will it benefit the others? Like, the other ones were probably all new. So other schools can learn and share from it. So those, I think we had another scoring group for that.
Yeah, we split some things, you know, again, we were trying to get a little bit tighter on innovation, like what really is that, you know, again, the Smart Lab is a good example because it's been around. I'll use the Milner example too, you know, some of the STEAM type things. Again, from my perspective, what they were trying to do, I may have had resources like through the after school network, I'll just say, because Kristen has a lot of STEM and STEAM type things. So I maybe could have the principals in that direction. And it wouldn't have been funded here, but we didn't have a mechanism to kind of say, for them to come to me even and say, we're looking at STEM and STEAM, what do you have available, or should it be pushed towards? And again, am I the person to say, yes, this would be a good project or not? Because I don't want to be in that role of saying what you should or shouldn't do. And so those are the kinds of questions I think we kind of came up against.
Well, you don't want to reinvent the wheel. If you already have a good program, why would you want them to start their own program when it's already been established too?
But I think the balance is it might be new to that school, but it's not new to the community.
Right.
So should those kind of things be funded?
So I listened to it the first year we did it, and it was really good discussion, and then I just got out of it, right? Because it was like, everybody was having good discussions, like, yeah, that's what's supposed to happen, and I didn't listen this last year to the meetings. But you know, I don't know a lot about what happened up there, but like the Choice Ready one is an example of, you know, what I would like to see long term, and you're talking about it too, of tightening it up a little bit, is what are those things that can get created then that other people can use and utilize? You know, I didn't know a lot about the Learner Studio until I went up to Corey's thing at Northern Pass, and students and the teacher were talking about the Learner Studio and that experience and the different model. And I was like, and then I saw it on here when I was going through the Innovation Fund thing a little bit, and I thought, oh, well, fortunately, I know more about that. And I'm like, oh, that was a new experience. That was a new model that they're using to help kids engage in their educational experience, right? And we had a couple of kids talk about a real positive experience, and we had one girl said, you know, it wasn't for me. And then the teacher said, yeah, but she had the best project of all the kids, right? But how it went about and the work and the intensity she felt, probably it didn't feel very good, but at the end of the day, so it was a new experience. I don't know a lot about the others, so I don't want to say positive or good things, but those are the kinds of new things I hope, you know, I know the conversation is happening that way, that we keep raising the bar on it a little bit. And so it's going to always be a little bit of a hit and miss on it. You know, you're trying to hit some home runs. And so
Is there a way to feature these for other schools, like in our
we
newsletter?
do send them out. We send them out to all the superintendents so that they know the projects with short descriptions, and again, contact information for the people who are actually running the project and stuff, but.
Which I think maybe the teachers that would get more, if it got sent out to some of the teachers, they might get more excited about it than the superintendent.
Well, that's the thing, and I think that's one of our questions maybe is, you know, the difference between a teacher innovation grant where you're doing something in your classroom. Which I believe, you know, different districts have some of those mechanisms that they already do. You know, the Anatomy and Clay is an example of what I would consider a teacher innovation project, like that's actually. Something that teacher with those students in the classroom, but.
So who's doing the evaluation, Jen? So where's the rubric to show that this is a worthwhile to continue doing the innovation fund compared to not doing it? I mean, is it really doing?
We don't have anything large scale like that. Like, I don't.
I think it's worthwhile, and I think just you guys are working through the, anytime there's a new thing, you have to just what you're doing, reevaluate the process. I think it's gonna be hard to.
I think some will take some time to really reflect back and see that they had a positive impact and probably we need to go, maybe we need to do a little bit of a look back and have a little bit better feedback to the board in this process in regards to the results as opposed to just the.
Well, and I think what you said though, too, I mean, we want, like, I don't know what Partner Studio is, but maybe that would be something for Jamestown. But if Jamestown doesn't know, you know, maybe the
So-
right people in Jamestown, you know,
So
so I
that-
think you're gonna get your.
Well, and
teachers
that's probably the thing. I know that,
So
we
can
talked
use-
about,
Yeah.
we've had the superintendents, at the
Replicated.
superintendent's meeting, Corey presented in the spring about what they did. I mean, each of them talked about what their projects were, so the superintendents do hear about it, but again, to your point,
think
you know,
we
if there
could
was.
utilize our newsletter, even just going off of what occurred last year and doing a highlights of those completed. You know, we can certainly, that's an
We'll just pick
easy
one.
thing in terms of putting it out broader for replication, you know.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to, the idea is to come up with something innovative and then.
And again, from a-
Replicate it,
Keep
or an
Sure.
opportunity to replicate it, and yeah.
But again, so that my caution on that is like the smart lab example, like, then am I only gonna get innovate or smart lab requests? Because now CDE isn't even supporting it, you know what I mean? And so that would be, I don't think is that something we want? So again, replicability, I don't know on our rubric if that's.
You might be able to pick and choose what you feature next time.
Sure.
Well, yeah, that's,
You know what I mean?
it's a good point,
Yeah.
because like another school might want it, but is it new? And that's why he's talked about having a different like
Well-
rubrics for anything that's new should probably score higher.
I mean, I'm always leery of saying like, well, you know, Northern Cass has done that, so it's not new. Innovation is a local issue. I mean, a school district could be exceptionally traditional. Now they're putting the smart lab in. To me, I think the issue is more, is it systematically going to impact all the learners at some point in your district? And if you can say that, that to me is more innovative, like our studio model is right now a 6 through 12 initiative that now this year we are pushing down to the elementary. So the things we learned this last year now will impact every kid in a different way. So I think looking at it that way, like how is this going to impact all learners in your system? That to me, and that's a little trickier in a system that's got 12,000 people in it, but I still think it can be figured out.
Anatomy and Clay probably doesn't fit the same criteria that you were in. I think that for me, it's the sustainability, that what's our mission here as far as our group compared to everybody else's. I think these are all great ideas, but do you continue going forward with them? So I totally agree with Anatomy and Clay. I probably would have not done that if you're looking systematically. It's going to affect a small group of people, but
So we need to decide how you want to fund this for the next year again. I will say this.
I don't really want to give up on it, yeah. I mean, I just feel.
No, we kind of, again. We kind of had, it was kind of our compromise in regards to always being in the black and always, trying to reinvest some of that money, so from my perspective, I do think we need to do it again. Again, you can vote and do however you want to do it. But I think it was kind of a commitment that we kind of made. I think it would be too early to give up on it. And again, I think we have it in good hands, the committee that are having conversations about it. It's a dynamic discussion that's ongoing. And so I think we would just need to keep growing in the process. this early in the stage.
Might help us attract some smaller schools to become members also, so these kinds of things, you know. Just information sharing about them.
So I think if you ask every school, I think it's made a positive impact in those, whether it be a classroom or the entire district, it's made a positive impact. And I think if we discontinue it, it'd be a very negative PR.
I think it's gonna be more competitive, though. It's gonna be
Yes.
tougher for you.
It's only
guys,
year
though, to
two.
decide if you don't have a
Yes.
rubric, and it is really early, but I still think if, when you do year three, at some point we have to come back to the board and say, is this really doing what we had hoped it would do? Or not, and I think it's too early to say that right now.
I agree, because like 2 years from now is Northern Cal still doing the learner studio, then it made a positive impact. You know, are we still doing anatomy play 2 years later? Is it?
Yeah.
Is it filtered to a couple other schools?
And I made a note, we will do a little bit of follow-up on that, and we'll figure out how to bring something back here. Well, I don't know whether it'll be in September or in December, whatever our meetings are, but that's a good point to have a little bit more follow-up. On the last couple of years.
And there may be,
I think Kyle, you said something very important that I don't believe anybody should gloss over. And this was created not necessarily with any noble idea of solving issues in buildings. This was created because we almost had a mutiny inside. Okay, so let's just talk about the elephant. Okay.
I tried to bring it up.
Well, I'm good at it. As long as I'm here, if you even begin to think of getting rid of this, you better be prepared for the fact that we're going to have some districts that may decide to leave. It was a tool we used to try to put some salve on some very, very difficult scabs to heal, I guess would be the right way to put it. I don't know that those scabs are totally healed yet.
It helped.
It helped, and I'll just say also, because I hope we're going to get to it. I think we've all studied it. We shouldn't even be talking about this today. This is not in the purview of the new governance model, unless we decided we're going to get rid of the innovation fund. The only thing we really should be talking about is how much money we're going to put into the budget for next year, because that's what a governance board does. And then our staff can operationally figure out what should be the tools we're using to decide who gets what. And I'll shut up.
In our governance model, though, we could though say, if you want to monitor the innovation fund and ask those questions, we could be having that conversation through there.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's not that we can't talk about it, but
I was, in my mind, I was thinking you have two choices. If you want to get rid of it, great, then you're gonna need to start doing assessments back to the districts and paying them.
Yeah.
Because that number, that 3.8 million just won't stand, and that was the reason we started this, and I think the unintended consequences were really benefiting the different learners across. And personally, in my mind, I think we should add more into that fund, and I also think the newsletter is great, you guys do a lot of work, but I also think you should put money in there to hire a videographer to go out and capture this. And I mean, yeah, you're gonna spend some money on that. We have some of that. You can send that to your parents, you can send that to people. People will watch a 5-minute video clip before they're gonna read a newsletter. And I mean, no offense, I write an article for the newsletter, nobody reads mine either. So, I mean, I seriously think we should increase it. Be diligent. I trust you guys if you make decisions on what should be funded or not. That's your guys' role. And we're one that have been funded. If you denied it, I'm gonna trust that there were better ones than ours to be there. But I think one, we capture it differently, but I think we increase that. And so if we do get the second round of grants, you can say, yeah, we can fund these at that full amount. We have the money right now to do this. And so instead of saying, should we keep it? I think we actually need to push more chips in and say, let's impact more kids and get more districts involved.
I'll make a motion to have the innovation fund at $125,000.
Second.
we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? I guess it's an action item.
It is. Should we put action item by
I
it?
think we should put action.
Because we knew it was gonna be an action item.
Is there any
Okay.
discussion? All those in favor of keeping innovation fund and moving it to 125,000, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right.
And thanks for the group that continues to work on that. I know it takes some time, but we appreciate it.
Are you guys willing to continue doing that since?
We have a rotation set up. I can't remember what it was. So,
It's in our process.
yeah,
Okay, thank you.
so we get more people involved. That's not,
Yep, but you guys are stuck for just a little bit longer.
but I think
Until we get through the first
Yeah.
part of this, and I think this next part will be,
All right, executive director's report.
So we're just gonna touch on a few things. They're not in any particular order. Again, I think part of, I like the videography thing, actually. I mean, we've been talking about how to be more engaging and things like that. Our desired results. So we have 5 things here that we're gonna talk about to some level, again, just to give you an update. Again, I'm gonna let Jen talk about the Choice Ready dashboard. It's a project that I understand, but I wanna make sure that it's. Jen?
Yep,
I'll let
so
you-
I just gave you just a brief update, and again, the description. Part of our state accountability system is Choice Ready for the high schools, and so within Choice Ready. As many of you know, there are approximately 43 or 44 indicators. That are within the Choice Ready factors. I mean, all of the computations, those indicators, and every district, everybody has to figure out how to collect that data and manage it for all of their graduating seniors, but through their high school years. And so this project was actually part also of the innovation fund, but also it came through there for part of it. But we have 7 different districts within the state. 5 of them are Seek, and then we have Grand Forks, the 2 high schools there in Mandan Public that we started with. Again, the need is to try and figure out a solution. Fargo Public Schools has been working on a dashboard to collect all of the data. I didn't put the data diagram on here, but we do pull data. If you look next to the actual chart here. For the Choice Ready, we pulled data from PowerSchool, from SLEDs in the Ed portal for certain data. We have spreadsheets, depending upon the district that you're in terms of co-curricular and extracurricular activities, and then different forms that we collect data for work experience. So every district is doing this in some different way. Small schools, large schools, everybody. So the amount of data varies, but the amount of people involved in this process at every district is probably taking some people's time. So this diagram here on the 3rd page is really what I just want to draw your attention to. They kind of give you kind of the phases of this. Well, it's all phase 1, but we have kind of these 3 phases. We spent the whole year starting in about November, December, getting everybody who wanted to be part of it. Just talking about how the common metrics, those kinds of things. Andy Dowling is the person. He was a high school principal at Fargo North forever and retired, but has come back to the Fargo Public Schools as the Choice Ready manager. Started working within that district. Steve Giroux is a good friend of mine and does all the data in Fargo Public Schools too. They started creating a dashboard that then linked to kind of a public facing access for parents and students on PowerSchool. So I kept talking about the Choice Ready dashboard because as a parent, I can see it on PowerSchool for my son Max, who's in high school, and I can it tracks those indicators that he's meeting in real time. So if it's coming from PowerSchool attendance, daily attendance, I can see that he's meeting that indicator right now today. But so I kept talking about Choice Ready dashboard. I was thinking that the dashboard itself is all of the data, the big data set that's behind it. And that's the part that has the power to leverage the kinds of decisions we're making in our schools to say, how are we contributing to increasing kids' opportunities for co-curricular activities or extracurricular activities or the community service hours. Or so every year schools are expected to increase their Choice Ready percentage by about 10%, I think is the state accountability system. So we're taking this in phases. So phase 1 was bringing all of these district, and the principals in each of these buildings together to set kind of some common metrics. We have the indicators, but how people were doing things in every district, in these 7 districts was very different. So we had to spend some time with that. And what essentially happened is we hired an external technology firm to, or software company to build a plugin that then pulls all of the data from these different areas where data exists. And then we had to figure out some mechanisms, either surveys or some forms to collect initial data. That will be also systematized a little bit more, but we needed to, in this first phase 1A, get to a point where by June 30th, when all of the principals needed to submit their report in STARS or in the Ed portal, that they could push a button and basically it would go. And so that's what happened through June 30th. Right now, we're kind of in obviously the summer months, but the next piece here is what are some of those, what does the data actually look like, unpacking that, and then what are some of those strategies to start setting some goals to increase their choice ready outcomes, but also then that external facing piece on PowerSchool that isn't in place for all of the districts yet, but that wasn't the primary spot to start. It was trying to get to that report, mechanize that. Then we want to get those up and running for the other 7 districts. Fargo has it running. The other districts will get that external facing, and then we'll start collecting some of the additional student data that we did surveys with, because we had to get the seniors before they were done. So we had to have a right now solution, and now we're looking for a forward solution. So that's where we're at for kind of this next phase. The third phase, or the third part C, decide how I was going to label these different parts, but is going to be this next, going into this next year. We need to have an implementation plan. So what Andy has been doing in the Fargo Public Schools is he's met with the building level principals and gone through all of this. He's met with the counselors and given them how they can work with kids. He's met with students, he's met with teachers. So all the things in terms of like implementation and PD and those kinds of things, he's done that. Now he's going to be working with these other districts and going and working with them to really get this implemented well. So that's what I would consider kind of our 3-step process. At the same time, there's going to be kind of a phase 2. I just put those considerations. You know, we still are what's working, what needs to be fixed. What would be some scaling practices? Who might be some next schools to consider? Partnerships with NDDPI and NDIT. I'll let Kyle talk about that. And then there was some legislative allocation to scale a choice ready dashboard, but it's not necessarily our choice ready dashboard. So I don't know what the next look is, but we have some great partners in the 7 districts that we're working with, and a lot of buy-in. Nobody batted an eye. The districts that bought in, again, I wrote down, did you call it earnest money? Spread on, I put that, like, there was an initial investment by those districts. They wrote choice ready grants, which all schools had access to through DPI last year in October, for about 20, they could get a maximum of $20,000. So Wahpeton, each of the high schools in West Fargo, Grand Forks, Mandan put in, Jamestown put in, Valley City put in, Fargo, because they had they were the proprietary owners of the information to begin with. There was their investment. So they all put in money first, and then they used the innovation fund to get some more. So that's what funded it. Again, my time and our seat time, that's the risk and that's the investment that we make in these projects.
Were you in that, Corey? Were you in that group? So again, I'm not an expert at this, but I have been involved. And I appreciate the work, but this is an example, you know, when we start thinking about solutions and thinking about scaling and thinking about sustainability. So the model was put together. Everybody knows there'll continue to be a subscription to this, I'll call it. But the problem we were trying to solve is the amount of time people were spending collecting this information at the end of the year, trying to figure having to go all the way back. We wanted to integrate technology, so, you know, we say push a button, it might be a little more complicated than that, but perhaps it's not. So that you know, create more efficiencies. But the second piece of it to me too, and as I sit on the SLEDS board now, and we starting to talk about this larger data lake of information, not just that involves schools, but different types of things, is how are we engaging parents, and how do we continue to engage parents in their kids' education and what's happening in the school in regards to that education. And so those are the two opportunities for us, to help schools become more efficient and help schools engage parents and kids in with the dashboard. And so the 300,000, so I know the legislator that writes the budget for NDIT, so we got $300,000 put in there so that we can scale it. So that we can invite other schools into it. I started the conversation last week with NDIT about how that money can be used, and we're going through the process of, could we grant it out? Could we, you know, it's in the early stages, because as you can see, we aren't done with the first project yet, right? We want to make sure we're ready to take it to another school district. But ultimately, you know, from what I heard and listened to, I think it's great opportunity. And then back to the innovation fund, some of those dollars. I think it's a very good opportunity to integrate technology and engage parents. So,
Is there another group outside of the 7 districts working on a different dashboard?
It would just be,
because
like, the conversation was with DPI and their technology people prior to us taking this on and using an external person. But they just said that they did not have the capacity.
So it better be darn good, that's what they're saying, so we can scale it.
yeah,
And the reality is that, you know, if we were to present, it really should have phase 1, and then this all should probably be phase 2, because Fargo has it working. You know, Fargo alone as a single district has it working. This is already a scaling of it to try and figure out how do we work with 6 more districts. So again,
and every state's unique, right? Choice Ready is unique to North
That's what I
Dakota,
was
so
gonna
there
say.
isn't the software out there to push
And
in.
we're not California, so it doesn't behoove
Yeah.
vendors to try to sell this stuff.
I could
It's not
give-
enough population.
I have a document that sits on my desk that I just got about all of the data that we're trying to bring together as a state.
Yep.
Not just for education, but for people's health records and trying to understand demographics and, you know.
A lot of it's.
But this is an important piece, the education piece, how we're impacting kids, because a lot of that behavioral health and some of those strategies with kids, we're trying to identify earlier in trends and how we can
Brittany, you do
create
this
innovations.
as the high school principal in Richland,
I mean, kind of, my counselor,
and how much time do you
it's
think?
terrible, honestly. I don't do it because I have to delegate things and there's just no way. But just the amount of, with a new counselor last year, it took her a whole year to understand it. The amount of time that should have gone elsewhere, I don't even want to think about it. Just to understand, and even me as the high school principal trying to explain it to somebody, it's just, yeah, but very simplistic way of saying hitting a button. I know it's not that simple, would be fabulous.
So we appreciate everybody's work, Jen's work on it and all the.
Then
tools
it's
that have
like
come together.
Power School, like
It pulls from Power School, it pulls
So
from.
you
the
took Algebra
external.
2, it just pulls that right in and
Yeah.
it can verify the grade and so.
It's like right here.
Yeah.
It's different, well, there's different data that you
Yeah, I saw
need.
that, yeah.
It'd be nice, it'd be nice to know
Mhm.
if it is something that's gonna be rolled, because we're working with the company right now to try to do this. And so we would go a different route with that because of the same thing. I mean, we don't have 500 kids, but it is a arduous process that we meet like 5-6 times a year where we're going through that and then meeting with kids and asking parents. So we were having to build one for ourselves because we were just struggling.
So and that's the thing is, who do we go to first and next? Is probably one of our questions, but
Yeah, and I guess from my standpoint is, you know, if we're spending our time on it, it should be our SEC. So.
Sure, and then you add in 300,000 from the state, and they'll stay as long as it's available to everybody statewide, so, I mean, I would be. Okay, that's what happens when we get the state involved in some of it, this has been. Between the leadership of Andy Dallin and Stephen Duro. Like,
Fargo played an important. role
they,
in getting
they
it out
keep
there.
it, and we've got great partners, so we can do the things faster, you know, that's the. Advantage, so yeah.
How much did the state give to roll this out for schools?
What's that?
How much did the state give to schools to roll this out?
Nothing.
So again, that was Grand Forks, I mean,
That was kind of
really the model.
You're still allowed those grants to be used for it. I mean, they
They did, but not,
So is that? the
they won't have
legislative
any more,
case
yeah, they won't
that
have any
this year?
more grants.
no,
this
that's a
year.
whole nother story.
That's a
How I
different-
wrote
that's
that in.
different, okay.
Yeah, they don't have any more.
But it's to help roll out. So as we go forward, we will, you know, it's one of our, you know, we have lots of things going on, right? But I mean, it's one of the things that we recognize that can really have an impact on efficiencies and can have an impact on parents. We're trying to engage parents more. When I say we, I collectively mean everybody in education wants parents to be more involved with their kids, right? I mean, that's the goal, have positive impacts on the school. So we will talk more about this as we go on throughout the year. I mean, it's part of our operational plan. It's our desired result. When we talk about those 3 results, you know, I mean, you'll see where that is, and then we'll roll our operational plan, and that'll be part of one of our focuses. And we'll talk about that a little bit more, but we just felt like it was important to share an example of trying to create solutions and create efficiencies about how we got to that vision that we have.
I think as much as you can help schools with this, it's tremendous because this falls on the school counselors who are already.
Yep.
Short-staffed and looking at extended contracts and all.
So we'll keep moving here. Yeah, thanks for the very good discussion. We will continue to have a placeholder for this, not maybe in every meeting, but there will be a process that flows a little bit just from an awareness standpoint and maybe in my newsletter too that I send out. 21st century. So, you know, again, we continue to sub-grant and we're working on changing some models. We made a decision here in the last 3 to 4 weeks, last 3 weeks that we want to talk a little bit about. We appreciate Patty's time in having discussions, not only about the agenda and about the governance model, but a couple challenges that we've had. And I'll let Jolene talk a little bit about what that is and where we're at with that.
Yeah, so during our meeting in April, I believe we talked a little bit about the 21st century program, how it's sort of moving towards more of the academic requirements with the federal GEFR measures changing, and discussed sort of as Zeke's grown and we tend to do more capacity building, doesn't make as much sense for us to be running programs in other districts, especially as staffing challenges happen, and our main office is in Fargo. And so we have been thinking about that, thinking about sort of a longer timeline to sort of transition that grant towards that model of completely sub-granting the way that we are in Fargo with Lisbon's new program, that type of thing. We are working with Ellendale kind of towards, I would say, a hybrid of getting them there. Again, for us to staff a program in Ellendale, even though it's small, it doesn't work without the school district buy-in, without that partnership. We had that in the spring with a student teacher that they had, and it was awesome. So we're doing that. Fairmount is looking to come on and actually, we'll probably be calling you guys about some questions because I think they're looking at a similar sort of intervention model. In Jamestown, we have had a number of challenges from staffing, some challenging families. We actually with 1 week left to the program, we had 2 parents file a child abuse case against us. The students were doing jumping jacks as punishment. It's less than 1 minute. We believe it will be unsubstantiated, but it sort of has risen to the level. We've also had an Office of Civil Rights case filed against us 4 years ago by this same family, which was dismissed. We went through mediation, agreed to things that were just best practices to do. But it speaks to just the challenges of, you know, what our role should be in supporting programs that are operating versus being the folks that are hiring the people that are far away from us, essentially. And so working with Dr. Leck to have the district take over the program, unfortunately, the timeframe was very less than ideal to make a decision that quickly. Yep, not ideal. I think when we talked in the spring, the idea was going to be, this has been a process. I will say though, over the years, we have tried to get more engagement in the way we have in Mapleton, in the way we have in other districts, and for one reason or the other, haven't been successful with that. So we told parents yesterday about that. We're working to retain the staff to transfer over to the district or for a community partner that's going to operate their program. But very much less than ideal, and I'm sure there's some folks upset in the community as well. But based on sort of that situation that arose and that it will honestly continue to be ongoing, it's just a difficult to put the organization in that continued position.
So Jamestown is taking it over.
Well, we were notified, I think we had about 3 weeks, we have about 3 weeks to figure everything out.
Okay.
So it's gonna be a challenge. We're trying not to panic our parents, because I think we'll have a full on uprising in Jamestown. We're very much shift work kind of families. Before and after school is so critical. We don't have the Fargo populations of, you know, people want more, seems like people want more flexibility of being able to leave work and get their kids. We're not like that. When we have the state hospital, we have the human services, we have just a lot of shift work at our manufacturing. That type of, those types of families that this is just 100% reliant. And then if our families start putting their jobs, or the communities, I think our unemployment's it's way lower than other places. It's like 2%, 1.7%, something like that in Jamestown. It's super low. And we're kind of we're in an island there in Jamestown, you know, we're 100 miles from any large communities. So people have to live there to work there. So it's going to be, we're going to make it, we're going to have to make it work. So we're going to have to, but Dr. Leck is busy on it right now, and he's trying to get things. It would have been better for us if we, you know, July 1st next year, we have to transition out, but this short time frame is going to create a lot of challenges. The board had some discussion on it Monday about it. So there's some concerns.
Jolene, are you saying that this is the that we're talking about going in the future in general?
We're basic. Jamestown was essentially the only program that we completely ran without much district involvement. So we were already there. I think the fact that there are 4 programs there, obviously would have hoped for a longer timeline and to spread things out. I know over the years we've tried to approach the district with some of the other things we're doing with other districts, and there hadn't been either capacity or to do that. And so we made a choice that is, our hope is that we had staffing planned, we have materials, the supplies, the enrollment, the structure there, that we can transition that to the employees or the districts and to work with them then to set it up.
So everywhere else, there is that setup, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ellendale moved last year with their new administration to have more of that. So if we had the staff member was on our payroll, if she wasn't there, they organized the subs, they helped communicate to parents. And then the second half of the year, she went on maternity leave. So we actually used one of their staff members. And so they were just billing us for staff time in the same way that Lisbon does.
And I think if we go back historically, you know, Amy Walters was the person for this program. She resided, you know, she was in Jamestown. So it's a big program in Jamestown. So there's some history also of just not like necessarily, we haven't done this in other districts. It's the history of, this is kind of was the hub of it. So, yep, historically for those that are on the board a long time. But if you just like any other superintendent here going, oh, by the way, in 3 weeks, figure out your after school program and staff it. And so it'll be, Dr. Leck is amazing. And so he will figure something out, but it just sort of added to his plate. Timing wise. I don't disagree with the concept. It's the time.
And again, we had a lot of internal discussion and then ultimately I have to make a decision, so. That
Yeah,
decision lies with me and so
And I think all of our districts have challenges and families that provide challenges. And that's just part of what we do in education, so.
all right. Jolene, do you want to share childcare aware just quickly quickly share whatever in regards to where we're at with that, and we'll talk a little bit more on that, the budget maybe a little bit too.
So we'll have our renewal of the HHS funding, which
Joe, I'm going to interrupt you real quick. Can you give just a short synopsis of what childcare aware is?
So childcare aware, every state receives CCDF funding to provide training, technical assistance, parent resource and referral. It's not here, so I'm totally missing one of the bullets. Essentially to the mixed delivery system in the state, which is primarily licensed childcare, but could include Head Start as well as school district programs. Essentially, we provide almost all the training content that allows people to be in compliance with their clock training hours for childcare licensing. This year, as in the session, most everyone knows, we've had the largest investment in early childhood in a number of different strategies, increase in best in class. We do a little bit with that from a health and safety standpoint. There's 1.5 million for shared services. So that's one of the challenges is a lot of folks who are in early childhood childcare. They're really great at educating and caring for kids. Business is something that they probably didn't go to school and there's not very much infrastructure. And so that is a piece that we will be doing a lot of work around. We actually started a pilot working with Strength and ND last year to use a software system called ProCare that allows them to communicate with parents as well as do their sign in, sign out, pay staff. It connects with another vendor that will actually do their payroll for them. So looking at those types of services that will remove some of that capacity challenges for childcare. School districts that do childcare would be eligible as well through our Strength and ND. So we're working on some of those different pieces that we know are challenges within there. There's some, I'm trying to think of the other, they're all it's in a bunch of buckets.
Yeah.
There's some additional training incentives and in pieces that they're going to roll out as well. Some, I think, additional startup and capacity grants. So if you have either community childcare, family childcare for them to add additional slots, I think there's going to be some funding coming out. So we know a lot of districts are working, either they have their own district preschool, or that's obviously an important piece for you to have staff in your communities. So as you're experiencing any of those challenges, please reach out to Keeley, and because there are resources through that. I know we saw CCA as an extension of the things that we do at SEEK, although it was a little bit of a jump, and we're seeing it really full circle in as the childcare crisis has grown and in some of our rural communities, especially being a challenge. So there's additional, I guess, work as part of that state funding to be taken on this next 2 years.
Yeah, so I think it's really important. This runs through the early childhood division in human services. I know probably some still see it maybe as a little bit of a stretch, but it's so critical to the whole infrastructure. If you're going to find part-time pairs, you're going to find people that want to be working or driving buses or whether they're, it's just, I just really think it's that we are, as the SEC, going to play an important role across the state in helping provide some infrastructure and be part of some important discussions in regards to, keeping this process moving forward. And then what are the things too, as we get past 0 to 18 and into the 3-year-olds, and then you get into the best in class, what is, how do we keep maybe the overall experience of childcare and education and early childhood education seamless and making sure everybody has access to quality and access.
I think that's one of the challenges during the session is that they touched on somewhat the affordability and the quality piece, the capacity, or the availability. You know, that not so much. So I think that's going to be a focus as well.
All right, and then just a couple other quick ones, TSI, CSI, you know, just talk briefly about that a little bit.
So again, targeted and comprehensive school improvement supports was a new focus area for us last year. DPI, in working with DPI, they determined that the REAs were going to serve in a role as a liaison to the schools who were targeted. They needed some more accountability for the schools, but also that relationship between our schools and between the REA and the schools. Prior to that, a lot of schools would hire like an ed direction or a schools cube to come in from out of state, and then those people would leave again and come back, and then they leave again, and there was beliefs that because we had built so much infrastructure in the REAs, that the REAs were at a point where we could provide this support. So last year was our first year, and we learned a lot in this capacity. Some REAs hired people, and some, I think there's 25 or 28 schools that are, I think that's how many schools across the state have been identified. It's our lowest 5% for comprehensive, and then it's formula to figure out what that next level of support is. And so within each REA, we determined where our capacity was. I chose to have 3 of our staff, myself and Brandy and Dinette, serve in that capacity so that we truly understood what that looked like. I had 1 school in West Fargo, and Brandy had 2 schools in Fargo. Dinette had 1 school in Fargo and 1 school in Sargent Central. And so we learned a lot. We have a group, obviously, across the REAs that we meet as a community of practice, and we meet with Amanda Peterson and Rachel from DPI, and we're evolving this process. We spent 2 great days out in Bismarck last week, looking at this next year. The whole accountability system kind of got an overhaul. And so we're going to hopefully know our schools next week, and we're super excited because that's so much earlier than several years in the past here. But again, the process and the connection of those liaisons, we're changing the role from a liaison to a liaison coach because we spent a lot of time coaching. And so minor adjustments, we do get compensated for each CSI school at a rate of about $30,000 per year. And those are 3-year school identifications. And we only have 1 of those. So we will keep that school for the next 2 years. And hopefully, and they're making really fun progress, good progress. And then we had 4 of the schools were TSI. TSI last year was funded at $18,500, and this year they're moving it to $22,500 for each of the targeted schools. And we're just putting some tighter accountability processes in place for ourselves, but also for the schools. And just a lot of support. So we do get some support from Region 11 Comprehensive Center on the process of improvement science and just some of our practices. But again, we have a great group. It's just a really fun group. I actually was sitting in the room last week. I told Kyle and a few others that in that room, we had more people than I remember ever being in all of the areas combined, just working on some of the school improvement work. And again, it isn't just this piece that when Kyle put out the 5 things that were in law for REAs, one of them is assistance with school improvement or meeting school improvement goals. So again, this is part of the school improvement process. Every school in the state, you guys know, is part of Cognia or one of these 2 areas. But that continual support of our schools in meeting their goals. This is kind of an extension of that. So we did hire an additional staff member to also work, some on math and some on TSI, CSI, but I think I'm gonna have to wrestle maybe some of my staff away from this because it is being in the schools on a consistent basis, working with that process, and it is just very fulfilling work. So we'll get everybody here and decide who's taking what, but once we know our schools, it'll be making that right fit, so. Only year two, but it's fun.
Thank you. And then the last piece, just a little bit on
Yeah,
the science training, where we're at.
Area to pop out. So yes, we're continuing. We have 1 year left of ESSER 3 funding from the state to help kind of support the requirement for training in the science of reading. Legislature also put some funding in to have one staff member from each elementary building, volume 1 and volume 2 of letters. It's not specifically named in the legislation of that, but that's what they would like to do. Those are going to come out in terms of grants, and then we are working to stand up. We do have several letters cohorts that are coming this fall and spring again, but an additional 1 or 2 virtual cohorts as well. And those are statewide, and then additional funding that was in that legislation was for Mira, a AI-based reading, I guess, tutoring program, intervention program, and then trying for that last part of the biennium, what additional support is needed. We feel like nobody needs us to develop any more training. We need to focus on what does implementation and helping folks that have gained the knowledge look like. So we're really open to feedback on that, because I think it's been talked about, well, what else can we develop? And we have 101, 2, we have a lot of choices in state, plus, you know, other choices that folks can make. And so we're trying to figure out what that looks like, to whether it's coaching model, you know, TOTs, things like that. So that's going to be a focus of Carrie and her team. We added Shannon Knutson from Moorhead to that team, and she has started. And now lunch is available.
Okay, so it's good, 'cause I was gonna, so you'll see later on in my professional and personal goals. One of my goals is to help the board understand the roles and the responsibilities of the executive director better. And I think it's a really important role as I get closer to the end and the beginning, right? And so just in summarizing this just a little bit, so with the Choice Ready dashboard, that I didn't really have a lot to do with that, but I attended the meetings on it, right? And my job as the executive director is Jen invites me to the meetings, and I ask the questions, do we have a business model before? Are people committed to it? I listen to the discussion, and I know Jen's got it under control, okay? My role then is from a revenue management standpoint, okay? So we have a model going, okay? So we're gonna have to sustain that. How are we gonna scale it? What, and so when I got to the legislature, I won't go through the whole process, but I write the budget on the Senate side for the NDIT. There were dollars in there that didn't get spent. They were actually your dollars that Kirsten didn't spend. And I took $300,000 of those from NDIT and put them into Choice Ready dashboards so that we could scale it to schools. So that's the role that I play in that. Jen runs that. I understand it more now that I'm on the sleds. I got appointed to sleds because I wanted to understand the data better. I'm starting to make more connections, and I really am sold that this could have a really good impact. What I do with the 21st Century programs, I wrote the initial grant. How many years ago was that? Did we write the grant? More than I can remember, before we hired Amy Walters. And we've been transitioning through that. So I got involved in that. We talked about Jamestown. I had to make a decision there, but through the process, Jolene runs that. But again, it's the revenue management side of things, but again, they run the programs. I'm not an expert at all. Childcare to Wear, it was a passion of mine that I thought we needed to get involved in that. I had to twist some arms internally on that a little bit, but our staff works hard. There's just no question about it. Again, my role in that now, Jolene and Keely run that program with others. My role is simply to help negotiate the contract. And again, it's a large contract, 4.5 million over 2 years. Is that fair? Roughly. And again, trying to make sure that the expectations of that contract can match what we can deliver. You know, and when we're challenged for workforce. So that's my role in that process. I'm not an expert in the childcare. I learn more every time I talk to them, but as the executive director, my role is to help identify, to make sure that we can deliver on that and that we're figuring out, you know, with early childhood that things are aligned. TSI, CSI, I didn't have a lot to do with that. I, for a long time, as the executive director, believed that we were sending knowledge outside of our state by bringing external people in from different states to work on the TSI, CSI. It didn't make any sense to me. It didn't make any sense to some others either, but finally DPI, and we have a great working relationship with their people. They figured it out. Why aren't we building these relationships and this capacity and this understanding and this infrastructure in our own state? Why are we bringing in consultants from the outside? Again, the science of reading, that was, again, I'm more involved from a revenue management standpoint to make sure that we have the revenue, we have the people, and that we can deliver. So that's really, you know, when you hear people talk about, we take a little bit more time in August to talk about this, and there will be some monitoring and some conversations about this throughout the year. But that's really my role and responsibility. The experts are in the room. My job is just to make sure that we have the revenue, we have the sustainability, and that we have the staffing and the level of staffing that we need and supporting them in their work. So I think that could be a good place. If there are any questions, what we talked about this morning, you can have some lunch, and after we have a little bit of lunch, we're going to get into a little bit more detail and on some of the governance and the policies. And look at